You know that peaceful moment when you finally move into a place that just feels right? That was me 6 months ago. After years of apartment living with paper-thin walls and neighbors who thought midnight vacuuming was a personality trait, I finally saved up enough for a cozy little house in a quiet suburb. It wasn't anything flashy, just a 2-bedroom with a big old backyard, some mature trees, and enough space between houses that I could blast Metallica without getting side-eyes through the drywall. That backyard, man, it was the selling point. As soon as I saw it during the open house, I pictured summer barbecues, fire pit nights, and lounging in a hammock with Black Sabbath, humming softly in the background. My own little kingdom of peace. Just me, my grill, my speakers, and maybe the occasional squirrel with a death wish. Now, full disclosure, I am part of an HOA. I know. Cue dramatic music. But in my defense, it wasn't one of those nightmare HOAs that measure your grass with a ruler or send passive-aggressive letters if your front porch gnome isn't seasonally appropriate. Nah, this one was pretty chill on paper. As long as you didn't turn your house into a neon pink castle or park a boat in the driveway, you were golden. Of course, there's always that one neighbor. I didn't meet her right away. For the first couple of weeks, everything was smooth sailing. I unpacked, settled in, and got to know the rhythm of the neighborhood. Lots of retired couples, families with toddlers, and one guy 2 houses down who always mowed his lawn at exactly 7:45 a.m. on Saturdays, which honestly was kind of impressive in its own annoying way. Then came the pastel lady. I first saw her during one of my early morning coffee rituals. It was a Sunday, and I was standing at my kitchen window, sipping from my Powered by Black coffee and heavy metal mug, when I noticed movement in the backyard. At first, I figured it was a deer or maybe a very bold raccoon. But nope, it was a woman. Mid-40s, long blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, decked out in head-to-toe pastel. Activewear, the kind that looks like it was dipped in bubble gum and smugness. She was inside my backyard. And the weirdest part? She just waved, not sheepishly, not apologetically. Like she was saying good morning from her front porch. Just a big, casual, hi there. Kind of wave like this was normal. I blinked, literally rubbed my eyes. She gave me a thumbs up and then calmly exited through the side gate. My gate, that I didn't even realize wasn't locked. I stood there, coffee halfway to my mouth, brain buffering like a cheap internet connection. Convinced myself it was some weird fluke. Maybe she was chasing a loose pet. Maybe she got lost trying to visit a neighbor and somehow walked through a clearly fenced yard with no shame. I laughed it off. One-time weirdness. Suburbs have quirks, right? Oh, sweet, naive past me. Little did I know, that wave was the opening act in what would become the most aggressively zen turf war in suburban history. And it all started with that pastel woman and her megaphone voice. But I'll get to that. For now, just picture a peaceful backyard, the smell of freshly cut grass and the slow, inevitable build-up to chaos. Because in this neighborhood, serenity has a time limit. It had been a long, soul-sucking day at work. One of those days where everything that could go wrong did. Emails piling up, printer jammed every 5 minutes, and someone burned popcorn in the break room, setting off the fire alarm. All I wanted was to get home, collapse into my lawn chair and let some slayer blast the bad vibes away while I stared into the trees like a suburban philosopher. But peace, as I was quickly learning, is a rare and precious thing in this neighborhood, because when I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. My side gate was open, odd, but not panic-inducing. What was panic-inducing, or at least severely confusing, was the sight that greeted me when I stepped into my backyard. There were people, a group of women, stretching, twisting, and humming on brightly colored mats across my grass like they were auditioning for a Lululemon commercial. A soft instrumental version of Imagine wafted through the air from a portable speaker. Incense smoke curled lazily above a folding table stacked with tiny herbal teacups, lemon slices, and something suspiciously kombucha-like. My patio chairs had been moved aside to make space and, cherry on top, Someone had rolled out a Zen Zone flag and planted it next to my fire pit like they were claiming a new continent. And there she was. Her, pastel pants lady, front and center, guiding the group with slow hand motions and a voice as syrupy as a bedtime meditation app. I stared, blinked, took a deep breath because I could already feel my brain overheating. Excuse me? I said, loud enough to cut through. The Enya light background music. The women paused mid-pose. Karen, yes, at this point we're calling her what she is, turned unfazed and smiled like I was the guest at her event. "Oh, hi," she said brightly. "Just finishing up. You're welcome to join if you're open to it." I stared at her like she'd just asked if I wanted to birth a goat in my living room. "Why are you in my yard?" She tilted her head like I was the weird one. "This is community shared space, isn't it?" "No," I said slowly. "This is my property. This backyard came with the deed and mortgage and, the massive check I wrote to own it." She laughed as if I'd told a silly little joke. "Well, the HOA encourages neighborly collaboration. We believe in fluid spaces, areas of mutual benefit. This just happens to be the most spiritually aligned yard in the block." I almost choked on my own confusion. Spiritually aligned. "Lady, this is a patch of grass and a fire pit." Karen clasped her hands in front of her chest. "Exactly. Fire, an elemental force. You should be honored your home has such natural balance." I was about one incense stick away from throwing my grill over the fence. "You need to leave," I said firmly. "This isn't a public park. I don't want people in my yard without permission." She gave me that condescending smile people reserve for toddlers and angry Yelp reviewers. "Of course, we're just about finished." And just like that, she turned around and resumed her sun salutation. I walked back into the house in stunned silence and called the HOA, fully expecting backup. I explained everything, how these random people were showing up, how she planted a flag like we were in the middle of the Yoga Louisiana purchase. The woman on the phone, Deb or Bev or something, equally HOA-ish, sounded disturbingly calm. She said. "We encourage inclusive neighborhood activities. Are you sure they're not using common space?" "Yes, I'm sure. I have a fence and a gate and a property line." "Well, we'll look into it." Click. Spoiler alert. They never did, and the yoga didn't stop. Twice a week, like a creepy pastel cult, they arrived. More mats, more incense. One time, a speaker the size of a microwave that blasted ocean sounds while instructor Karina, lectured about opening your heart chakra to neighborly unity. It was like Coachella met a meditation retreat, and both decided to trespass. And I was stuck watching my sanctuary turn into a stage for unsolicited alming. And yeah, at first I was confused, but the longer it went on, the more I simmered. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war. Okay, deep breath. I told myself I wasn't going to be that guy. The grumpy neighbor, the lawn sheriff, the dude who ruins everyone's good time because someone breathed too loudly near his property line. I didn't move to the suburbs to go full Clint Eastwood, yelling, "Get off my lawn!" So after 2 more surprise yoga sessions and what I can only describe as a drumming circle involving rain sticks and something called sound bathing, I decided to do the mature thing. I caught Karen one morning as she was gathering up her yoga props. Blocks, rolled mats, an empty herbal tea carafe that still reeked of ginger and regret. "Hey, Karen," I said, forcing my best let's be civil smile. "Quick chat?" She turned to me with her ever-present smug serenity. "Of course. Are you finally joining us for vinyasa and vibrations?" I ignored that. "Listen, I get that you like doing your classes outside. Totally cool. But this is private property. My property. I'm asking, nicely, if you could move the class to, say, the community park 2 blocks over. It's open, it's public, and honestly, you'd probably get more space." She blinked like I'd just told her the earth was flat. "Oh, that park is so noisy. Cars, dogs, kids. This yard has great acoustics and energy. And besides," she gave me that tilt-headed smile again. "You're hardly ever outside. We're not disturbing you," and there it was. The unspoken logic. If I wasn't using my backyard 24/7, then clearly it was free real estate. Like my lawn was a neglected timeshare she was generously putting to use. I don't need to live out here for it to be mine, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. That's literally how private property works. She gave a breezy laugh. Well, I think this misunderstanding will sort itself out. We'll be out before noon. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was entitlement dressed in yoga pants. Still, I gave the HOA another call. Tried again. I even emailed them photos of the yoga crew mid-flow, incense clouds floating over my barbecue grill. The response? Another vague, bureaucratic shoulder shrug. We're reviewing the situation. The board will discuss it further at our next monthly meeting. Next month. Meanwhile, things got worse. Karen started leaving behind gear, mats stacked by my fence, a basket of yoga straps tucked under the patio table. One day she left a whole crate of rolled blankets, like she was trying to gentrify my backyard, to a yoga studio. And it wasn't just the clutter. My grass was getting worn down with footprints. One of her students spilled kombucha, bright purple, sticky as hell, all over my deck and didn't clean it up. It dried into some kind of herbal fossil. My backyard was starting to look like the aftermath of a low-budget wellness festival. But the real breaking point? That came when I walked out one morning to find a strange car in my driveway, blocking my trash cans. Yep, one of Karen's students had parked there without asking. My bins didn't get emptied that week. I had to live with my own trash for 7 days, including some leftover fish tacos that evolved into their own civilization. I knocked on Karen's door, calmly, I swear, and asked her student not to park in my driveway again. The next day, I got a letter from the HOA, a warning letter. Apparently, I had been aggressive toward community members participating in approved wellness activities. They said they received multiple complaints about my uncooperative attitude. I reread the letter 3 times, certain it had been addressed to the wrong person. I was the problem now. I called the HOA to ask what the hell was going on, and that's when the last puzzle piece clicked into place. One of the board members, a woman named Marcy, had started attending Karen's yoga sessions. Yep. She was there, in the backyard, downward dogging next to the kombucha cooler, smiling like this was all perfectly normal. So now Karen had inside support. She was using the HOA like a shield, manipulating vague community language, neighborly collaboration, wellness promotion, to justify squatting in my yard twice a week like it was her God-given right. And I realized something. Right. Then and there, as I held that warning letter in my hand, this wasn't just about yoga anymore. Karen had figured out how to weaponize politeness, community spirit, and the very rules meant to keep things civil. She wore her pastel calm like armor. She was playing a suburban power game, and I was the last person to realize we were even on the board. She'd drawn the battle lines with scented oils and throw blankets, and I was done playing nice. By the end of that week, I was teetering on the edge of a full suburban meltdown. My peaceful backyard had turned into a pastel battlefield. My trash wasn't picked up, and now the HOA was treating me like the villain in a movie I didn't audition for. I needed to blow off steam, so I called up my buddy Ryan. Ryan's one of my oldest friends. We bonded in high school over Iron Maiden albums and our mutual hatred for group projects. These days, he's the kind of guy who proudly wears a denim vest to PTA meetings and refers to Metallica concerts as church. If anyone could help me exorcise my HOA demons, it was him. I ranted for a good 10 minutes about Karen, the kombucha, the flag, the driveway, the HOA letter. I could practically hear him shaking his head on the other end. Then he laughed, a low, evil chuckle that sent chills of inspiration down my spine. Dude, he said, why not give them a sound bath of your own? I paused. What? You know? One of those metalhead chakra realignments. Blast some Pantera at sunrise, cleanse the air with some goat screams and double bass pedals. It was meant as a joke, but it hit me like a lightning bolt of chaotic brilliance. Karen's yoga cult had a schedule. Tuesdays and Thursdays, always at 7 a.m. sharp, like a spiritual train station, always on time, always predictable. I checked. The HOA handbook, the one I got when I moved in and promptly used as a coaster. Sure enough, right there in the noise and nuisance section. No noise complaints will be addressed unless the disturbance occurs before 7:30 a.m. on weekdays. Karen starts at 7. I've got a 30-minute window. Oh, it was on. No yelling, no confrontations. No aggression they could report back to their kombucha-sipping allies on the HOA board. Just good, old-fashioned, passive-aggressive suburb warfare. Operation Sound Bath of Doom was born. The first step? Equipment. I dropped some cash on 2 heavy-duty outdoor speakers, ones designed for garden parties and tailgates, but about to be used for a far nobler cause. I mounted them to my back porch, facing directly toward the center of what Karen considered her Zen zone. Next, I curated the most unholy playlist imaginable. I'm talking Slipknot, Pantera, Slayer, Gojira, anything with enough shredding, screaming, and demonic wailing to rattle a crystal grid. For a touch of chaotic spice, I even mixed in a few tracks of screaming goats. Yes, actual goats. Don't ask how I found those. Just know that when played at the right volume, they are deeply unsettling. I named the playlist Namaste Out of My Yard. By the time Sunday night rolled around, I had tested the setup, synced the playlist, programmed my Bluetooth, set my alarm. And as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt it, not rage, not annoyancy, but anticipation. I wasn't just fighting back anymore. I was plotting. The petty fuse had been lit, and there was no turning back. Karen thought she could steamroll me with incense and smiling condescension, but she forgot one thing. You don't mess with a metalhead in the suburbs, especially not before coffee. The morning of the first Metal Tuesday felt electric. I was up before the sun, pacing in my kitchen like a man about to launch a rocket, coffee in hand, Bluetooth synced, playlist locked and loaded, volume knob preset to apocalypse. I even lit a candle. Not for the vibes, but for the irony. At exactly 7:01 a.m., I stepped onto my back patio like a concert conductor, pressed play, and let Slayer's Raining Blood rip through the neighborhood like a sonic war cry. The drop hit with glorious precision, thunderous drums, wailing guitars, and a screech so intense it probably shaved 5 years off the collective life expectancy of every pigeon within a 2-mile radius. It was beautiful. In the backyard next door, my backyard, let's remember, the Zen zone collapsed like a house of chakras. Yoga mats flailed. Someone actually shrieked. A woman mid-downward dog collapsed like a folding chair. One poor soul knocked over the tea table while trying to shield her ears with a throw pillow. And there, center stage, was Karen. She spun toward my house like she was expecting to see Satan himself summoning a portal. Her eyes locked on me, standing at my window with a mug of coffee in one hand and a content smile on my face. She stomped up to my sliding glass door, mouth moving, arms flailing, but she had to yell over the glorious carnage of Cannibal Corpse, now growling through my second speaker. I didn't open the door. I didn't even pretend to lip read. I just gave her a polite wave, sipped my coffee, and turned the volume up another notch. She stormed off in a puff of lavender-scented rage. But the best part? I didn't break a single rule. HOA noise regulations started at 7:30 a.m. I made sure the metal stopped at 7:29 on the dot. I wasn't on her property, I didn't threaten anyone, and I hadn't laid a finger on anything. I simply existed, with excellent taste in music and well-timed speakers. Thursday, round 2. She tried to be clever, passed out noise canceling. Headphones to the group like some crunchy boot camp instructor. No problem. I rolled in my portable subwoofer and queued up Meshuggah with extra bass. The ground trembled. Birds scattered. One woman's yoga block visibly vibrated off her mat. By the time we reached the first chorus of Bleed, Half the class had quietly packed up and power-walked out the gate. Karen stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of essential oils and broken dreams like a general who'd just lost a war she didn't know she was fighting. The next week, her class had shrunk to 3 loyalists and a dog who looked like he regretted everything. By Thursday, even they were gone. She tried moving the class into her own backyard, finally. But karma, dear reader, is an attentive listener. Her yard was undergoing some kind of landscaping project. Giant piles of dirt, half a pergola, a backhoe just sitting there like it was judging her life choices. I watched from my patio, sipping coffee to the sounds of Lamb of God and construction drills. Poetic. She never returned to my yard, never apologized, just pretended like the whole thing never happened, like she hadn't tried to colonize my lawn with teacups and chakras. And me, I kept the speakers, not out of spite. Okay, maybe a little out of spite, but mostly as a reminder. Sometimes when diplomacy fails and HOA letters stack up against you, all you need is 120 decibels of vengeance and a killer playlist. Namaste, Karen. Namaste. Out of my backyard. After a week of my early morning metal meditations, Karen finally snapped. She filed a formal complaint with the HOA, claiming I was disruptive, hostile, and, my personal favorite, engaging in psychological warfare through sonic aggression. I have to admit, that one almost made me spit out my coffee. But here's where the universe finally decided to balance the scales. Instead of slapping me with another warning, the HOA did something shocking. They actually investigated. Maybe it was the volume of Karen's complaint. Maybe it was the growing number of speakers showing up in my yard with mugs and popcorn. Or maybe the board finally realized that Karen's pastel-colored empire was getting out of hand. Whatever the reason, they pulled the thread, and her whole yoga house of cards unraveled. Turns out Karen had been dipping into community improvement funds to buy supplies for her so-called neighborhood wellness initiative. That fancy incense, funded. The yoga mats and folding chairs, charged to a shared HOA card under recreational outreach. Even her Zen Zone banner had been reimbursed as signage for community events. She hadn't just hijacked my yard, she'd been charging everyone else for it. And once word got out, oh, the floodgates opened. Turns out, I wasn't the only one silently suffering. Mr. Kapoor from 3 houses down said the drumming sessions gave his cat anxiety. Claire from the corner house complained about tea leaves clogging her gutters after a windy yoga day. Even sweet old Mrs. Greeley muttered something about those giggling harpies invading everyone's peace. Karen had built her whole thing on assumed politeness, counting on the fact that no one would speak up. But once they saw someone stand their ground, with heavy metal and subwoofers no less, the neighborhood found its voice. At the next HOA meeting, one Karen actually had the audacity to attend. Things got spicy. She walked in like she owned the place, left looking like a soccer coach who just got benched mid-game. The board voted to suspend her community privileges pending further review. That meant no reimbursement access, no event hosting permissions, and no more surprise yoga pop-ups in any common or private space without formal approval. Karen turned redder than her strawberry chai. And the best part? No yelling, no fights, no threats, just a guy, his speakers, and a community that finally woke up and said, yeah, this is kind. Ridiculous. As Karen left the clubhouse head low, someone whispered, guess the sound bath worked. Damn right it did. It's funny how fast things go back to normal when the neighborhood hurricane moves on. Karen's backyard is still under construction, though now it just sits frozen in a state of renovation limbo. Half-finished deck, lonely. Wind chimes clinking against silence. No more banners, no more incense, and certainly no chanting. Honestly, it's kind of eerie, like a yoga cult packed up and fled overnight. Meanwhile, my backyard. Thrive mode. The fire pit is finally being used the way nature intended. S'mores, beer, and stories about HOA drama told with unnecessarily dramatic voices. I've got weekend BBQs going. My buddy Ryan even gifted me a little wooden sign that says Metal Meditation Zone with a goat skull carved into it. Charming, peaceful metal mornings are now part of the routine. Nothing excessive, just a little bit of Black Sabbath with my eggs, some Tool with my Sunday paper. Even the birds seem cool with it now. I caught one bobbing along to Iron Maiden the other day, or maybe it was having a seizure. Hard to say, and get this, people actually ask me for my playlist now. Claire from the corner house wanted it for her morning runs. Mr. Kapoor said it helps drown out his teenage son's EDM phase. Even Mrs. Greeley told me she doesn't hate the one with the drums and the Vikings screaming. I believe she meant Amon Amarth. But the best part? One glorious Saturday morning, I looked out my window and saw my neighbor Kyle. Mid-30s, works in IT, owns way too many lawn gadgets, standing on a yoga mat in my yard, wearing a Metallica t-shirt, trying to do Downward Dog. We made eye contact. He just said, "Metal yoga, man. Let's embrace the chaos," and cranked his own little Bluetooth speaker to full blast. That's when I knew I had won the war, not just against Karen, but against suburban blandness itself. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any better, it did. 6 months later, Karen's house went up for sale, no announcement, no goodbye notes, just a discreet little real estate sign one Monday morning, swaying in the breeze like the final flag of surrender. The official listing described the property as having tranquil landscaping and community spirit. I had to laugh. On the day of the first open house, I may or may not have set up my speakers again. Purely for ambience, of course. Nothing too aggressive. Just a smooth, tasteful loop of Judas Priests breaking the law. The real estate agent looked mildly panicked. The prospective buyers looked intrigued. I looked smug. They bought the house 2 weeks later. A young couple with a rescue pit bull and a bumper sticker that says, "Support local bands." I like them, already. Now my backyard is mine again. Just me, my grill, my friends, and a Bluetooth speaker that's seen things. And Karen? Wherever she ended up, I hope she found her zen. Far away from my fire pit and my subwoofers.